In the sterile high-stakes world of Veridian Global, CEO Jonathan Pierce discovers an impossible secret. His quiet, night custodian, Eleanor Vance, commands 8 fluent languages and a profound strategic intellect. When a multi-million-dollar deal hinges on flawless communication, Jonathan impulsively thrusts Eleanor from the mop closet to the boardroom, challenging the corporation's rigid adherence to credentials. Eleanor must now navigate the treacherous currents of executive politics to prove that instinct and brilliance are worth far more than a degree, ultimately revealing the vast, unseen talent hidden in the company's shadows. If you liked the video and have subscribed to my channel, let's move on to our story. Enjoy watching. The Veridian Global headquarters was a monolith of polished glass and steel, a 40-story declaration of corporate supremacy looming over the city's financial district. For Jonathan Pierce, the CEO, it was both his castle and his cage. At 43, he had the tailored suits and relentless energy of a man perpetually closing deals in 3 time zones, yet tonight, his pace was slow, his mind heavy with the weight of an imminent, high-stakes international acquisition that was teetering on the edge of collapse. It was just past 11, an hour when the only movement in the marble-clad, cavernous lobby should have been the slow sweep of the night custodian's mop. Jonathan, needing to clear his head, had foregone the executive elevator and was descending the grand staircase, his leather briefcase swinging lightly by his side. He stopped dead on the 3rd landing. The lobby was not silent. A high-pitched, frantic stream of foreign speech cut through the stillness. Below, near the revolving doors, a small group of 3 men, clearly international visitors, distinguished by their expensive, slightly rumpled travel clothes, stood arguing vehemently with a bewildered delivery man in a bulky insulated jacket. The delivery man held a fragile-looking box wrapped in red ribbon, gesturing helplessly to a nearly invisible shipping label. Jonathan recognized the foreign language instantly, Japanese. The tone was sharp, escalating into panic. The delivery was clearly important and something was terribly wrong. Jonathan, who prided himself on his passable but rusty business Japanese, started to descend, ready to intervene, when a figure moved into his line of sight. It was Eleanor Vance. Eleanor, who he knew only as the night custodian, a quiet 20-something woman with her hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, perpetually wearing the corporate navy blue jumpsuit and thick rubber gloves. He had seen her 100 times, a phantom tidying up the debris of the day, someone whose job was to be invisible. Now she was anything but. She stepped smoothly between the delivery man and the delegation. As Jonathan watched, she placed a gentle, calming hand on the arm of the most agitated Japanese man, and then, without a hint of hesitation, she began to speak. Kore wa anata no dua arimasen. Anata no heitatsu wa senjukyu kaida madamesu. Oakitsuai kudasai, watashi jie anata o tsurita kimasu. This is not yours. Your delivery is waiting on the 39th floor. Please calm down, I will take you up. Her Japanese was not passable, it was fluent. It was pitch perfect, effortlessly utilizing the correct honorifics and a soothing, culturally appropriate cadence that instantly diffused the tension. The Japanese men's shoulders dropped in relief, and they bowed deeply, murmuring apologies. Eleanor smiled, a soft, professional smile that transformed her face, and pointed them toward the secure, non-executive elevator bank. The delivery man, utterly stunned, simply handed her the clipboard to sign, and she did so with a quick, practiced flourish. Jonathan, halfway down the stairs, felt a cold jolt run down his spine. It was the shock of an unexpected, profound revelation. He stood frozen, watching Eleanor put the clipboard back, then turn back to the service closet. Her moment of linguistic brilliance seemed to have been immediately forgotten, replaced by the mundane rhythm of her shift. But the night was not finished testing her, or Jonathan's perception of her. Before Eleanor could reach the closet, the lobby's main telephone line, which was supposed to be forwarded to security after hours, let out a harsh, jarring ring. Eleanor paused, looked around, and seeing no one else, she picked up the receiver from the reception desk. Veridian Global Lobby. "How may I help you?" she asked, her voice low and even in English. Then her eyes flicked to the delivery schedule on the desk and she switched languages again. This time it was a rapid, guttural stream of Russian. Niet ito nevazmazno. Zaperskino ostavliat, korobki bez sroka kranenia v kolodilniki. Vi dolzny vernutsaya zavtra utrum. Spasibo. No, that is impossible. You are forbidden from leaving perishable boxes outside of refrigeration. You must return tomorrow morning. Thank you. She firmly but politely shut down the caller, an apparently aggressive courier trying to leave a temperature-sensitive package at the door, managing to be both authoritative and professional. 2 languages, executed flawlessly within 5 minutes. Jonathan silently descended the last few steps, keeping to the shadows of a large ornamental ficus tree. He felt like a spy watching an employee he thought he knew reveal an entirely different, highly specialized persona. He was no stranger to talent. He built his life around identifying and leveraging it. But this was talent hiding in plain sight, deliberately masked by a broom and a bucket. He watched her hang up the phone, her face betraying nothing, and then she walked over to the bank of monitors displaying security feeds. As she checked the perimeter, a large, dark-skinned man in worn jeans and a bulky backpack approached the main doors, looking confused and lost. He was clearly a late-arriving maintenance contractor, and he began rattling the doors looking for a way in. Eleanor walked toward the man, opened the door, and spoke for the 3rd time in a new tongue. This time, a rolling, melodic, and equally fluent Arabic. Alan wasalan. Hal yajibu and takuna hunali amal? Ikhal min hatha albab. Esayuwajihak. Welcome. Are you supposed to be here for work? Enter through this door, I will direct you. The man's face cleared in immediate relief. He spoke a quick, grateful burst of Arabic, which Eleanor answered with an easy, natural laugh. She quickly processed his ID, directed him through the service hall, and locked the door behind him. Jonathan Pierce had heard enough. This was not a cleaning lady. This was an asset. A profoundly underutilized, walking, talking Rosetta Stone of international communication, executing tasks that his most expensive, highly degreed international liaisons often struggled with. She wasn't just translating words, she was translating complex logistics, cultural expectations and corporate policy, all while wearing a navy blue jumpsuit. He stepped out from behind the ficus. The sound of his custom-made Italian leather shoes echoed sharply on the marble floor. Eleanor turned, her practiced, neutral expression immediately locking into place, the look of an employee caught off guard by the CEO after hours. She quickly tucked a loose strand of hair back into her ponytail, her composure momentarily shaken. "Mr. Pierce," she said, her voice dropping back to the quiet English of the custodial staff. "I didn't hear you come down. Is everything all right?" Jonathan didn't answer the question. He walked purposefully toward the reception desk, placing his briefcase on the sleek, black granite surface with a deliberate thud. He leaned his hands on the desk, fixing Eleanor with an intense, unreadable stare. "Ms. Vance," he said, his voice low but carrying an undeniable steel. "Veridian Global's official internal profile lists your education as high school diploma. The job description for your current role lists basic English proficiency. Yet, in the last 7 minutes, I have personally heard you conduct complex business logistics, cultural diplomacy and security protocol in Japanese, Russian, and Arabic." Eleanor's gaze dropped to her rubber-gloved hands, which were now gripping the handle of her mop. She didn't deny it. The silence stretched between them, thick with the weight of her secret being exposed. Jonathan continued, his tone shifting from accusation to a dangerous, demanding curiosity. "The security guard on the 10th floor told my executive assistant that you once helped a lost Egyptian dignitary find his car, speaking what he swore was flawless Farsi. The head of cafeteria services mentioned he once heard you casually chatting with a visiting delegation from Portugal in Portuguese. And I distinctly remember you helping a confused Italian plumber earlier this year, speaking beautiful Italian. I have heard rumors that you speak more than this. I was told you once claimed, a long time ago, that you spoke 9 languages. Is that true?" He straightened up, his eyes never leaving hers. The mop, the gloves, the uniform, they suddenly seemed like an elaborate disguise. "Ms. Vance, I don't want to know how you do your job. I want to know why you are doing this job. And I want to know the exact number of languages you speak fluently." He paused, his final directive cutting through the air like a knife. "Drop the mop, remove the gloves, and come up to my office. Now, I demand a full explanation." The fluorescent lights of the deserted lobby suddenly felt blindingly bright. Eleanor Vance, the invisible custodian, knew her life had just irrevocably changed. She looked at the expensive briefcase, then at the CEO's demanding eyes, then down at the mop. She gently let the handle fall to the polished marble. The small, dull click it made sounded like the closing of one door and the forceful opening of another. She pulled off the rubber gloves and placed them neatly on the desk, standing tall in the navy blue uniform. "Yes, Mr. Pierce," she replied, her voice steady and clear. "My primary work is on floor 39. I will meet you there in 1 minute." The executive floor was a sanctuary of hushed power, its carpet thick enough to swallow all sound. Eleanor Vance stepped out of the private elevator, her navy uniform stark against the pale, minimalist decor. She felt a familiar, ironic sting. She had spent more hours polishing these floors than most executives had spent working on them. Now she was here as a summoned prodigy, not a paid laborer. Jonathan Pierce's office was a panoramic corner suite, an entire wall of glass overlooking the city, a testament to his commanding view of the corporate landscape. He was already standing by the window, the city lights reflecting faintly in his perfectly slicked hair. When Eleanor entered, he gestured toward a pair of low-slung Italian leather chairs situated before his heavy, custom-built desk. "Please, Miss Vance. Sit," he commanded, his tone now less accusatory and more profoundly curious. He walked around the desk and sat down, his intense gaze never leaving her. "I told my security team I was taking an early call, so we have privacy. Let's dispense with the pleasantries. I need the truth. Not a resume but the real story." Eleanor took a deep breath. She didn't fidget. She sat with the quiet, weary dignity of someone who had long ago traded ambition for necessity. The uniform suddenly felt like a heavy, ill-fitting burden. "The 9 languages claim, Mr. Pierce, is technically incorrect. I am fluent in 8: Japanese, Russian, Arabic, Farsi, Italian, Portuguese, Mandarin, and Spanish. I have strong academic proficiency in 2 more, Danish and Ancient Greek, but I wouldn't translate a contract in them." Jonathan didn't blink. He simply nodded, his eyes widening almost imperceptibly as she rattled off a personal skill set worth millions to a global corporation. 8 fluent languages. That is astonishing. So, tell me why I find this kind of genius mopping my floors at midnight. Eleanor finally allowed herself a small, bitter smile. "I was Eleanor Rossi back then, Mr. Pierce. I was a linguistics major at Yale, on track for a PhD and a Fulbright scholarship. My master's thesis was on the phonetic drift in Indo-European language families. I was 22, brilliant and untouchable." She paused, looking out at the glittering expanse of the city, a view she had only ever seen while dusting the glass. Then the tragedies began. My father, who was my main financial support, had a massive stroke. 6 months later, my mother was diagnosed with a progressive, debilitating illness. I had to withdraw from my program. The loans were manageable, but the immediate, crushing financial and physical need for care was not. Jonathan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, fully invested now. This wasn't a corporate file review. This was a human story. I was 23 and I became a full-time caregiver. I burned through my savings, sold what little I had, and did whatever job I could find that was remote and flexible. That was manageable until my parents passed within a year of each other. I was left with a mountain of medical debt and the custody of my younger sister. She was only 16. Eleanor's voice was steady, utterly devoid of self-pity, just stating facts. The cleaning job at Veridian Global came when my sister went to college. It paid well enough to keep us afloat, and most importantly, the night shift was flexible. I could be home when my daughter got out of school, I could help with homework, and I could put her to bed before coming in for my shift. I am a single parent, Mr. Pierce. This uniform gives me the time I need to raise my child without relying on subsidized daycare or a live-in nanny. I chose time over career prestige. The confession hung in the air. Jonathan Pierce, a man whose entire existence was structured around efficiency, profit, and the relentless pursuit of talent, felt a deep, almost painful realization. He saw not a custodian, but a powerful mind shackled by circumstance and a profound sense of duty. The waste of talent was criminal. He pushed back in his chair, folding his hands. Veridian Global is an organization that prides itself on being global. We spend millions on cultural consultants, translation software, and expensive third-party liaisons. Yet, my best international resource is the woman I pay minimum wage to vacuum the conference room. He shook his head slowly. This is unacceptable, Ms. Vance. Unacceptable for you and unacceptable for my company. With all due respect, Mr. Pierce, "It is what it is," Eleanor replied firmly. "My daughter is my priority. The job is secure and the hours work. But your potential does not work. It is being utterly wasted," Jonathan countered, his voice rising with conviction. "I don't care about your lack of an MBA or your custodial uniform. I care about the fact that you saved an important delivery in Japanese and solved a security issue in Russian tonight. Instinct and competence are not degrees you earn, they are assets you possess." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. "I am not offering you a raise, Miss Vance. I am offering you an immediate, total transformation." He typed a quick, cryptic email. "Tomorrow morning, we have a critical, high-stakes negotiation with La Mancha Finance from Spain. This deal is worth $500 million. The team has been preparing for 2 months. Our lead Spanish translator, Mr. Diaz, just called in with an emergency. He is out. The backup translator is unavailable. We are completely stalled. If we cannot communicate flawlessly, we lose the deal." Jonathan looked up, a dangerous glint of challenge in his eyes. "I could spend the next hour trying to charter a private jet to fly in an expensive professional translator from New York. Or I could take the most unprecedented, illogical and reckless gamble of my career." He leaned across the desk, lowering his voice. "I am creating a special assignment for you, Ms. Vance. You are not to mop another floor. Starting right now, your job is to translate and advise during that meeting. Flawlessly. Seamlessly. You will be placed at the head of the table, directly opposite the Spanish delegation. You will not only translate, you will anticipate cultural friction points and guide my team through the negotiations." Eleanor stared at him, her heart thrumming a frantic beat against her ribs. The sudden, dizzying shift from cleaning crew to critical negotiator was almost too much to comprehend. "Sir, I can't. I don't own a suit. I don't have the corporate attire for this," she stammered, the physical details of her disguise suddenly feeling overwhelmingly real. Jonathan waved a dismissive hand. "The VP of Human Resources is authorized to immediately issue you a $10,000 emergency stipend for clothing and accommodations. You will be staying in the executive apartment upstairs tonight. I don't care if you wear a velvet smoking jacket. I only care about results. If you can save this deal, I will give you a job that is worthy of your talent. A job that will give you the income and the flexible hours you need for your daughter forever." He stood up, walking toward the window. "I am asking you to stop being Eleanor Vance, the custodian, for 12 hours. I am asking you to be Eleanor Rossi, the linguist, the genius who can single-handedly save Veridian Global $500 million. He turned back, his expression a mix of challenge and desperate hope. "What is your answer, Ms. Vance? Are you ready to trade the mop for the boardroom?" Eleanor looked at the chair, the massive desk, and the gleaming city. She thought of her daughter, the countless hours spent studying obscure dialects in between shifts and errands. This wasn't just a job offer, it was a chance to reclaim the life she had sacrificed, while still honoring the duty she held most dear. The fear was immense, but the opportunity was colossal. She stood up, her uniform still crisp and neat. "My answer is yes, Mr. Pierce," she said, her voice resonant with a quiet certainty he hadn't heard before. "Where is the briefing material? I need to review La Mancha's file before sunrise." The next morning hit Eleanor Vance like a tidal wave of silk, anxiety, and espresso. After a frantic 3 hours of reviewing the La Mancha Finance acquisition brief, a dense stack of documents detailing quarterly projections, debt restructuring, and jurisdictional caveats, all translated by her brain back into elegant, strategic Spanish, she had undergone a forced transformation. The HR-issued debit card had bought a stunning, conservative charcoal suit that fit her surprisingly well, a sharp contrast to the navy jumpsuit now folded and forgotten in the executive apartment. By 8:45 a.m., she was seated at the massive mahogany table in the most prestigious boardroom on the 30th floor, flanked by Jonathan Pierce and Veridian Global's chief financial officer, David Chen. Opposite them sat the Spanish delegation, Rafael Navarro, La Mancha's CEO, a man known for his rigid old-world formality, and his 2 legal counsel. The tension in the room was palpable. David Chen, a numbers man with zero tolerance for unpredictable variables, kept shooting Jonathan panicked, accusatory glances. Eleanor could practically hear his internal monologue, "You put a cleaning lady at the head of the table?" Jonathan, however, was a portrait of calculated calm. He caught Eleanor's eye before the meeting started and gave her a single, almost imperceptible nod. "Sonia." The meeting began in stiff, formal English, but it quickly devolved. La Mancha's team, visibly frustrated by the language barrier during preliminary exchanges, began peppering the discussion with rapid-fire Spanish legal terms. The entire deal hinged on the valuation of La Mancha's regional bond portfolio, and a fundamental misunderstanding immediately stalled the process. Rafael Navarro slammed his hand lightly on the table, his face tight. "Con todo respeto, Señor Pierce, esto no es un juego de niños. Sus números no tienen en cuenta la devaluación post-electoral. ¿Quién está a cargo de esta traducción? Necesitamos precision, no suppositions. With all respect, Mr. Pierce, this is not a child's game. Your numbers do not account for the post-electoral devaluation. Who is in charge of this translation? We need precision, not assumptions." David Chin paled, scrambling for a response. Jonathan, silent, merely leaned back in his chair, a slight, almost challenging smile on his face. Eleanor spoke. Her Spanish was not just technically correct. It was cultured, warm, and imbued with the authoritative confidence of a native speaker who understood the tone of the market. "Señor Navarro, entiendo perfectamente su preocupación sobre la devaluación, la cual lo aseguro ha sido incluida en nuestro modelo, no como una suposición, sino como una variable de riesgo ponderada. Permítame clarificar, el modelo de Veridian utiliza el índice IGBM ajustado, no el IBEX 35, lo que nos da una visión más conservadora y francamente, más favorable para usted a largo plazo. Mr. Navarro, I perfectly understand your concern about the devaluation, which I assure you has been included in our model, not as an assumption but as a weighted risk variable. Allow me to clarify, Veridian's model uses the adjusted IGBM index, not the IBEX 35, which gives us a more conservative and, frankly, more favorable long-term view for you. A beat of absolute silence fell over the room. Navarro, who had been ready to walk out, suddenly stared at Eleanor. The complexity of her response, not just translating the words but translating the financial and cultural nuance, stopped him completely. She hadn't just repeated a phrase, she had addressed his core objection with technical accuracy and perfect diplomatic respect. The meeting shifted immediately. Navarro dropped his rigid, corporate armor. He smiled, a genuine flash of relief and interest. "Ah, una profesional. Esto es excellent. Entonces, en términos de la cláusula de indemnización." From that moment on, Eleanor took command of the communication. She was magnificent. She didn't rely on literal, word-for-word translation, which often loses the spirit of a negotiation. Instead, she performed simultaneous cultural and linguistic translation, framing Veridian's aggressive position in terms of Spanish partnership values, and translating Navarro's formal reticence into actionable, clear-cut concerns for Jonathan and Chin. When Chin mentioned a specific asset being a low-hanging fruit for quick sale, Eleanor immediately translated it as una oportunidad de cosecha rápida, a respectful, agricultural metaphor that avoided the crass American idiom that might have offended the formal Spanish CEO. When Navarro expressed his anxiety about the fate of his long-term employees, Eleanor translated it not as he is worried about his staff, but as the delegation is concerned with maintaining the legacy and loyalty of their personnel, a point of honor that must be addressed up front. Jonathan watched her with a mounting sense of awe. This was not the timid custodian. This was an international strategist who could read a balance sheet with one eye and a cultural handshake with the other. She was effortlessly weaving through decades of corporate friction with flawless language and innate charm. The meeting went on for 3 intense hours. At a critical juncture, when the legal teams began arguing over the precise definition of a force majeure clause, Jonathan signaled a break. As the Spanish delegation stepped out, David Chin, the CFO, looked at Eleanor as if seeing her for the first time. His initial skepticism had been entirely replaced by stunned admiration. "Ms. Vance," Chin whispered, shaking his head, "you didn't just translate, you essentially rewrote the proposal in real time with your cultural footnotes. That was astounding. You smoothed over 3 potential deal breakers just with tone." Jonathan Pierce leaned toward Eleanor, his eyes alight with triumph. Navarro respects precision, but he is charmed by elegance and cultural depth. You gave him both. Now for the final push. They're stalling on the closing date because their chief counsel, Marta Flores, is insistent on a specific tax deadline adjustment, which is irrelevant to us but a matter of pride to her. What's your read? Eleanor sipped her water, her mind already 3 steps ahead. Miss Flores is a traditionalist. The objection is not fiscal, it is rhetorical. She needs to demonstrate that she fought hard for a final, non-negotiable concession. Offer them the tax deadline adjustment, Mr. Pierce, but demand a 24-hour acceleration of the final signing in return. They will feel victorious and we get the speed we need. Jonathan Pierce smiled, a real, genuine and calculating smile. Brilliant. You just turned a point of pride into a point of leverage. When the meeting resumed, Jonathan followed Eleanor's exact advice. He offered the minor tax concession with elaborate formality, asking for the early signing as a reciprocal gesture of partnership and goodwill. Rafael Navarro stood up, a massive smile finally breaking through his formality. He extended his hand across the table, not to Jonathan but directly to Eleanor. Señorita Vance, usted no es solo una traductora. Usted es una arquitecta de acuerdos. Ha salvado este trato y, francamente, la reputación de mi empresa. Un placer inmenso. Ms. Vance, you are not just a translator. You are an architect of agreements. You have saved this deal and, frankly, the reputation of my company. An immense pleasure. The documents were initialed on the spot. The $500 million deal was saved, not by software, not by an expensive consultant, but by a former linguistics student who had been sweeping the floors 12 hours earlier. As the Spanish team departed, leaving behind a flurry of handshakes and relieved smiles, Jonathan Pierce turned to Eleanor, his earlier confidence completely vindicated. Ms. Vance, he said, the steel back in his voice, but now it was the steel of determination. The mop is officially retired. You just proved your value in a single, profitable morning. The moment the La Mancha deal was finalized, Jonathan Pierce acted with the speed and decisiveness that had defined his career. He didn't wait for the standard HR review cycles, the committee approvals, or even a simple suggestion box. He drafted the internal memo announcing Eleanor Vance's promotion within an hour of the Spanish delegation leaving the building. The memo, signed by Jonathan himself, was both audacious and precise. Subject: Appointment of Director of International Communication and Cultural Strategy. Effective immediately, Eleanor Vance has been appointed to the newly created role of Director of International Communication and Cultural Strategy. Ms. Vance's immediate impact was evidenced by her flawless mediation and cultural advisement during the critical La Mancha Finance acquisition, where she was instrumental in securing a $500 million valuation. This role reports directly to the CEO, and is structured to leverage Ms. Vance's unique, global-level linguistic and strategic competencies. We welcome her to the executive team. The memo hit the Veridian Global internal network at 1 p.m., and the resulting shockwave was immediate and deafening. It wasn't just a promotion, it was a quantum leap, a bypass of 2 decades of traditional corporate hierarchy, bestowed upon an employee whose only previous visibility was the sparkle of the floors she cleaned. Jonathan called Eleanor into his office, where she was still in her borrowed charcoal suit, looking slightly shell-shocked. Eleanor, this is not a probationary offer. This is official, Jonathan stated, handing her a new corporate ID badge. The badge featured her name, the new title, and a magnetic strip granting her access to every high-security area of the building. Your compensation starts at 3 times what you were making, plus a significant performance bonus based on deal success. More importantly, your work hours will be flexible, designed around your daughter's schedule. You will coordinate with my executive assistant on all travel, which will be minimized until your family arrangements are stable. Eleanor gripped the badge, the cool, official plastic, a physical tether to her new reality. Mr. Pierce, I am profoundly grateful. But I want to earn this every day. I won't be a token promotion. You already earned it, Jonathan corrected. You saved the firm millions this morning. The problem now won't be proving your worth to me. It will be managing the internal resistance. And the resistance materialized almost instantly. The door to the executive waiting area burst open, not with a knock, but with the controlled, aggressive energy of someone who felt they had every right to demand entry. Marcus Sterling, Senior Executive Vice President of Strategic Partnerships, strode into the office. Marcus was the epitome of the corporate establishment. 55, sharp-featured, wearing a meticulously expensive suit, and armed with an MBA from Wharton. He had worked his way up the ladder brick by agonizing brick and viewed any shortcut as an act of corporate treason. Marcus didn't even acknowledge Eleanor. His focus was entirely on Jonathan. "Jonathan, I demand an explanation for that ridiculous memo," Marcus said, his voice low and trembling with contained fury. "A director of international strategy? Given to a custodian? A woman whose only listed credential is a high school diploma? With all due respect, sir, this isn't a strategy, it's a reckless, patronizing stunt." Jonathan remained seated, calm in the face of the executive's aggression. "Marcus, please. Eleanor just finalized the La Mancha deal, something your team struggled to land for 6 months. She was a translator, Jonathan. An expensive one, granted, but a translator. This company is built on credentials, on the proper hierarchy, on respect for the system. What message does this send to every manager with a degree, every VP who spent 10 years grinding it out? That you can skip the queue because you speak a few languages?" Marcus gestured wildly at Eleanor. "You have put a non-credentialed, untested service employee, a cleaning lady, in charge of one of the most sensitive aspects of our global operations. This is an insult to every single person with an advanced degree in this building." Eleanor felt a slow burn rise in her chest, but she held her composure, watching Jonathan handle his infuriated executive. "She speaks 8 languages, Marcus. She understands cultural inflection points that your entire strategic partnerships division misses on a quarterly basis. She saw the leverage point in the La Mancha deal in a 5-minute break when your team was still focused on spreadsheets," Jonathan countered, his voice hardening. "The system, Marcus, is built on results. Her results are already superior to yours in this specific area." Marcus stepped closer to the desk, his face tight with controlled rage. "Results delivered by an administrative assistant are one thing. Appointing her to an executive director role, a role that will require presenting to the board, managing budgets, and representing Veridian Global at international summits, is a catastrophic error. It jeopardizes our standing with the board, and it undermines the value of every established manager in this company. I formally object, Jonathan. This move is an open invitation for internal chaos." "Your objection is noted, Marcus," Jonathan said coolly, signaling the end of the conversation. "But the decision is final. Eleanor is the director. Your team will coordinate with her on all cultural and communication strategies going forward. If you choose to see this as a problem, that is your mistake. I see it as a vast, untapped resource." Marcus Sterling stared at Eleanor, his hostility a palpable physical weight. His eyes communicated a clear, icy promise. "This isn't over. I will find a way to make you fail." He gave a sharp, formal bow to Jonathan, and without a word to Eleanor, he spun on his heel and left the office, slamming the door shut. Eleanor let out a slow, silent breath. The thrill of the promotion was now tempered by the sharp, immediate reality of corporate warfare. Jonathan looked at her, his expression empathetic but determined. "Welcome to the C-suite, Eleanor. That was your first taste of executive politics. Marcus is powerful, well-connected, and he respects nothing but credentials and tenure. He will challenge you at every turn. But I have faith in your talent." "He has a point about the credentials, sir. I understand why he's angry," Eleanor admitted quietly. "He is angry because he is threatened, not because he is right," Jonathan countered. "But there is one more hurdle, and it's worse than Marcus." He leaned forward. "The board meeting is in 2 days. Marcus will certainly make noise there. But the real gatekeeper is Vivian Albright. She is on the governance committee. She is all about procedure, corporate rigor, and adherence to the letter of the law. If she calls you in, you must be prepared to defend your promotion on objective, measurable grounds, not just on the strength of one morning's work." Eleanor looked at her new executive ID card, the name Eleanor Vance and the title director boldly printed. She knew her battle had just begun. She had to prove to the entire institution that her instinct, talent, and life experience were more valuable than a sheet of paper from a prestigious university. The summons arrived not as an email, but as a stiff, formal printed memo delivered by a junior assistant. Vivian Albright, chair of the governance committee, requested Eleanor Vance's presence in conference room A immediately. It was the corporate equivalent of being called before a grand jury. Conference room A was not the main boardroom. It was smaller, colder, and designed for private high-stakes vetting. When Eleanor walked in, the only person waiting was Vivian Albright, an immaculate woman in her late 60s who radiated an icy, unyielding adherence to corporate regulation. She sat behind the table, a slim folder containing Eleanor's minimal HR file open before her. Vivian did not offer a handshake or a smile. She gestured curtly to the seat opposite her. "Ms. Vance, thank you for making yourself available. I understand Mr. Pierce is extremely busy. However, the Governance Committee requires a full review of executive appointments, particularly those that bypass all established protocols. I prefer to do the due diligence personally." "I understand, Ms. Albright," Eleanor replied, sitting down. She had chosen a simple, professional demeanor, refusing to appear either intimidated or overly defensive. She was here to present data, not excuses. Vivian immediately went on the offensive, her voice measured and precise, like the ticking of a very expensive clock. "Let's review your file, Ms. Vance. High school diploma. No corporate experience. No management training. No advanced degrees. Your previous role was a non-exempt, service position reporting to building operations. Now, 48 hours later, you hold a director-level title with an attendant salary, a budget, and a seat on the executive staff. This is not unorthodox, Ms. Vance. It is an operational absurdity." Eleanor let the accusation hang in the air, maintaining eye contact. "I appreciate your frankness, Ms. Albright. I would only point out that my file reflects a 20-year gap in my resume that does not account for talent acquisition. It accounts for family tragedy and duty. We are not here to discuss tragedy or duty, Ms. Vance. We are here to discuss credentials, risk, and corporate value. Mr. Pierce suggests your instinct and charm are valuable assets. This is highly subjective language. Veridian Global does not make half-billion-dollar appointments based on charm. We rely on measurable, predictable metrics." Vivian tapped the folder with a long, manicured nail. "Convince me that your promotion is not a reckless executive stunt that risks the integrity of our management structure." Eleanor straightened up. She knew this was the core objection, the fear that meritocracy was being undermined by a single, impulsive decision. "I agree, Ms. Albright. Instinct and charm are too subjective. So let's talk about measurable metrics," Eleanor began, her voice gaining strength and clarity. "In the past 48 hours, I have provided 3 specific, measurable deliverables that directly impacted Veridian Global's bottom line and corporate stability, effectively eliminating the risk of my appointment." She pulled a single typewritten sheet from her blazer pocket and slid it across the table. It was not a speech, it was a report. Metric 1, risk mitigation. On the night of my appointment, I successfully mediated a critical logistics error for a time-sensitive delivery of intellectual property from Tokyo using fluent Japanese. Had that delivery been delayed, the cost would have been a $50,000 delay penalty and a massive, irreparable loss of confidence with a key regional partner. Outcome: risk was completely negated. Vivian's eyes flickered down to the sheet, her expression momentarily changing from skeptical to attentive. Metric 2, deal closure. The Mancha Finance acquisition was stalled for months. In my capacity as a cultural and linguistic strategist, I was able to identify that the sticking point was not the valuation. It was a cultural demand for honorific respect and a rhetorical point of concession. By advising Mr. Pierce to offer a small, performative tax deadline adjustment in exchange for a critical 24-hour speed-up of the signing, I turned a deadlock into a successful, rapid closure. Eleanor leaned forward slightly. The value of the La Mancha deal, secured on Tuesday morning, is $500 million. The cost of a failed deal, the legal fees, the time, the reputational damage, would have been in the tens of millions. Outcome: a $500 million deal was secured directly because of my intervention. Vivian took off her reading glasses, a sign that she was now fully engaged, not just reviewing paper. And the third metric, Ms. Vance? Metric 3, institutional confidence. Mr. Pierce was facing fierce internal opposition, most notably from Mr. Sterling, who challenged my appointment on grounds of qualification. The success of the La Mancha deal was so profound and so immediate that it publicly vindicated the CEO's executive decision to promote talent over paper. This restores confidence in Mr. Pierce's leadership at a time when he is undertaking a major structural reorganization. Outcome: stabilized executive authority. Eleanor finished, her point sharp and undeniable. With respect, Ms. Albright, my lack of credentials is a historical fact. My proven capacity to generate revenue, mitigate risk, and stabilize executive confidence are current, measurable facts. My annual salary is a fraction of the penalty I saved the company on my first night, and infinitesimal compared to the value of the deal I closed on my first morning. The cost of a traditional degreed consultant for the same service would have been far higher, with no guarantee of success. She looked directly into Vivian's rigid eyes. To deny this promotion would not be adherence to corporate rigor. It would be an act of financial recklessness, ignoring proven, immense value in favor of adhering to an outdated organizational chart. Vivian Albright stared at the sheet, then at Eleanor. The silence was thick, charged with the weight of her decision. The corporate guardrail of protocol was powerful, but the guardrail of profit was paramount. Eleanor had used the company's own value system, objectivity and finance, to disarm her. Finally, Vivian closed the folder with a sharp, decisive snap. "Ms. Vance," she said, her voice dropping all hostility and adopting a tone of grudging respect. "You defended your position not with ambition, but with a balance sheet. That is the kind of language the board understands." She stood up. "I will inform the governance committee that, while this appointment remains deeply irregular, it is financially defensible. You have successfully countered the argument that instinct and charm are not valuable assets by quantifying them as risk mitigation and profit maximization." She extended her hand, finally, a cold but undeniable acknowledgement of Eleanor's victory. "Do not fail, Director Vance. The eyes of the institution are on you." Eleanor shook the hand firmly. The interrogation was over, and the executive suite was now officially her territory. Eleanor Vance's new office was a study in contrasts. It was spacious on the 38th floor, just below Jonathan Pierce's eyrie, and featured an impressive view of the city she had once only seen while holding a bottle of window cleaner. Yet, amidst the expensive modern corporate art and the state-of-the-art video conferencing equipment, Eleanor placed one single deliberate item on the corner of her desk, a small dark wooden box. Inside the box, carefully folded, lay her old night custodian's uniform badge. It was her tangible proof of where she came from and a constant, quiet reminder of the talent she had seen hiding in plain sight. She didn't keep it out of nostalgia, she kept it as a mission statement. Having successfully navigated the high-stakes negotiations and the treacherous waters of the governance committee, Eleanor was now ready to define her role, not just by closing deals, but by creating cultural change. Her first major initiative was designed to address the injustice she had lived firsthand, the systemic overlooking of brilliant, non-credentialed talent in non-desk roles. She spent weeks coordinating with HR, who were initially bewildered by the concept, IT and building operations, securing Jonathan's enthusiastic backing and a dedicated budget. The result was the launch of the Unseen Voices program. The program was revolutionary for Veridian Global. It was a formal 6-month mentorship and language training initiative exclusively for employees in non-desk, service-oriented roles, security guards, cafeteria staff, maintenance technicians, and her former custodial colleagues. The goal was to identify and cultivate latent skills, linguistic or technical, that the traditional hiring process ignored. During the launch event, held in a modestly decorated training room rather than the grand ballroom, Eleanor gave an address that instantly connected with the participants. "I know what it's like to have 2 conversations happening simultaneously in your head," she said, standing before 24 nervous, hopeful faces. "The one you have in English where you talk about the cleaning schedule or the leaky pipe. And the one in your native language where you solve complex logistics, translate news for your family, or navigate a global supply chain on a personal level. Your value is not defined by the uniform you wear, it is defined by the depth of your mind." She pointed to her chest, where her new director badge gleamed. "I wore a different uniform only a few weeks ago. The badge I have now is only possible because someone finally looked past the mop and saw the mind. This program is simple. We are going to find the brilliance this company has forgotten it hired." The response was immediate and overwhelming. The initial cohort was selected: a security guard who was a fluent Mandarin speaker and former software engineer in his home country, a cafeteria worker who had a degree in chemical engineering but needed flexible hours, and a janitorial technician who spoke 4 Indian dialects and was adept at complex scheduling. Eleanor personally mentored the first group. She held evening sessions, coordinating with their off hours, focusing on translating their real-world skills into corporate language, turning a night security guard's quick, multilingual customer service into a risk mitigation report, or a cook's complex inventory management into a supply chain optimization model. However, the change did not come easily. The internal resistance Jonathan had warned her about now became a subtle, corrosive force of exclusion and professional patronization, led by Marcus Sterling and his allies in middle management. Eleanor would attend executive meetings, and while her advice on global communication was now highly valued, the Unseen Voices program was often the target of passive-aggressive commentary. During a quarterly budget review, Marcus Sterling raised the issue. "Director Vance, I see the Unseen Voices program is requesting an increase in its training budget," Marcus stated, a dismissive tone dripping with thinly veiled contempt. "While I respect your commitment to philanthropy, is this really the most efficient use of company funds? We're diverting resources toward what amounts to glorified evening classes for non-exempt personnel. Shouldn't we be focusing on hiring degreed talent, not trying to retrain the existing custodial crew?" "Mr. Sterling, the program is not philanthropy, it is internal talent acquisition," Eleanor countered smoothly, looking directly at Jonathan for support, which he gave with a nod. "We are identifying talent that is already vetted, loyal, and integrated into our company culture. The ROI is far superior to external headhunting. Our goal is to reduce our dependence on expensive external consultants by leveraging our own people. For example, our new mentee, Mr. Lee, a night security supervisor, identified a $15,000 annual waste in our external Mandarin language document review fees. He's already saved us a fraction of the program's cost." The pushback continued in smaller, more insidious ways. Senior managers would deliberately schedule meetings during the training program's limited hours, or her men's would face subtle snubs from desk employees, finding their newly issued corporate email access briefly and inexplicably blocked. The culture was fighting back, treating the program as a cute, disposable hobby rather than a serious strategic initiative. Eleanor didn't fight back with anger, she fought back with data. She compiled weekly reports on the practical cost-saving suggestions generated by her ments. She insisted they be included in specific, small-scale cross-departmental projects where their skills could directly solve problems. One evening, while mentoring Mr. Javier, the janitorial technician who was practicing drafting a professional email in Portuguese, Eleanor spotted a stack of old, misfiled legal documents waiting for archiving on a nearby cart. A massive, disorganized collection of inherited contracts from a small European acquisition made years ago. "What are these?" Eleanor asked Javier. "They're old legal documents from the German satellite company we bought in the restructuring 5 years ago, Director Vance," Javier replied. "Marcus Sterling's team was supposed to review them, but they just filed them away. They're all in German. Nobody here speaks enough German to process them, so they wait for an external firm." Eleanor felt a sudden, familiar jolt of premonition. She reached for the top contract, a massive, dense document detailing regional manufacturing exclusivity. She settled back into her chair, her focus suddenly sharp, and began to read the dense legalese, translating the German fluently in her mind. The Unseen Voices program was about to deliver its first truly explosive executive-level result, one that would not only vindicate her vision but directly challenge the authority of her fiercest opponent. The German contract, brittle with age and dense with complex legal jargon, lay open on Eleanor's desk. It was the inherited legal debris from a minor acquisition, a satellite manufacturing facility in Bavaria that Veridian Global had absorbed 5 years prior. Marcus Sterling's team had deemed the documents archived, non-critical, and pending external German legal review, essentially pushing them into a dusty corner of the firm's liability management. But as Eleanor reviewed the text, her fluent German translating the antiquated legalese instantly, her focused calm began to fracture. She wasn't simply translating, she was spotting a catastrophic flaw. The contract detailed the long-term, exclusive distribution agreements with a crucial European auto conglomerate. Specifically, Section 4, subsection B, concerning the terms of exclusivity, contained a deliberate linguistic trap that had been missed by everyone, likely due to a poor, computerized initial translation and the lack of a fluent internal review. The clause stated that the manufacturing facility was barred from producing competitive components for any other client for a period of 10 years. However, the German word used for competitive components, Wettbewerbsfähigkeitskomponenten, was subtly defined in a preceding paragraph to mean components that could be used in a competitor's final product, a definition that was far broader than the common translation of directly similar components. Crucially, the next sentence, which had been completely mistranslated in the English summary, stipulated a $25 million penalty for each calendar year the exclusivity clause was breached. Eleanor's blood ran cold. She knew with immediate certainty that the Bavarian facility was currently manufacturing small generic electronic components that were being used by a key competitor, a technical, unwitting violation of the contract's overly broad German definition. The breach had been ongoing for 5 years. $25 million per year for 5 years. $125 million in potential liability that Veridian Global was completely blind to. She immediately pulled all the relevant manufacturing reports and cross-referenced the component codes with the competitor's public manufacturing manifests. The evidence was irrefutable. Marcus Sterling's team had signed off on the operational merger without ever verifying the exact definition of the exclusivity clause. The liability was real, and the other company was only waiting for the 10-year mark to approach before executing the penalty. The board review and public exposure. The annual board review was scheduled for the following afternoon, a grueling high-pressure session where every executive department had to defend its performance and its budget before the full board of directors. Jonathan Pierce knew this would be Marcus Sterling's last, best chance to discredit Eleanor. When the session began, Marcus Sterling, presenting his strategic partnerships review, made a pointed, thinly veiled attack. While we've been successful in major regions, I must reiterate my concern over the allocation of resources to certain, novel initiatives, Marcus said, glancing dismissively at Eleanor. We must prioritize core, experienced talent over speculative internal training programs. The risk of major, costly errors increases exponentially when we rely on staff without verifiable credentials. Jonathan Pierce, waiting patiently, simply nodded. Thank you, Marcus. Now, let's move to international compliance and cultural strategy. Eleanor? Eleanor stood up. She did not lead with the German contract. She first presented the 6 months of concrete, cost-saving results from the Unseen Voices program, the savings in external translation fees, the improvements in cross-cultural communication efficiency, and the internal risk mitigation reports drafted by her Mentz. She was building an undeniable case that her initiative was a profit center, not a cost center. Then she delivered the final, devastating blow. Finally, I have a mandatory compliance issue that arose directly from the proactive internal review capabilities established by my department, Eleanor announced, her voice calm and authoritative. During a review of unarchived acquisition documents, I discovered a critical, costly error in the 5-year-old Bavarian manufacturing acquisition contract. She projected the key German clause onto the massive screen behind her. The exclusivity clause, which has been operational for 5 years, was translated with a critical error. The actual, legally binding language implies that the facility is barred from producing any component that could be utilized by a competitor, a far wider definition than the English summary suggests. For 5 years, our facility has been unknowingly in breach of contract. A collective gasp swept through the room. Jonathan Pierce maintained a stoic front, but Marcus Sterling's face drained of color. The penalty for this breach, Eleanor continued, her eyes fixed on the board, is $25 million per year. As the breach has been ongoing for 5 years, Veridian Global currently faces a contingent liability of $125 million. The number hung in the air, paralyzing the room. Eleanor then delivered the vindication. Fortunately, due to the rapid identification of this error, we have time. We can immediately cease production of the violating components, issue a remediation plan, and through a cultural understanding of the original German counterparty's motivations, negotiate the liability down significantly, likely to less than $10 million, effectively saving Veridian Global over $115 million in projected costs and penalties. She looked pointedly at Marcus Sterling, whose eyes were wide with a mixture of terror and defeat. This contract had passed directly through his team's compliance review. The error was missed by the previous external legal review and was allowed to sit for 5 years by the team responsible for managing post-acquisition assets, Eleanor concluded. This error, which could have been catastrophic, was found not by an external law firm, but by a director with the linguistic competence to fluently read the original German document, talent that was previously ignored because it lacked the correct degree. The full board turned their collective gaze to Marcus Sterling. Marcus was shattered. His attack on Eleanor had not only failed, it had spectacularly backfired, as the person he had ridiculed had just saved the company from a financial blunder directly traceable to his department's negligence. Jonathan Pierce stepped in, his tone sharp and final. The governance committee signed off on Eleanor's appointment based on financial defensibility. I believe this $115 million in direct savings provides full and absolute vindication of my decision. The future of Veridian Global demands we prioritize competence and diligence over titles and credentials. The argument was settled. The whispers of reckless stunt died instantly, replaced by the hushed acknowledgement of Eleanor Vance's undeniable immense value. She had not only secured her position, she had irrevocably shifted the company's internal conversation about where true talent resided. 6 months after the board review and the spectacular $115 million save, the cultural temperature at Veridian Global had fundamentally shifted. Marcus Sterling, humbled and effectively sidelined, had been transferred to a non-strategic oversight role. The board, now fully on board with Jonathan Pierce's vision of talent over tenure, was actively seeking ways to institutionalize Eleanor Vance's success story. The biggest, most public acknowledgement came 2 weeks before the major industry summit. Jonathan Pierce called Eleanor into his office, not for a crisis meeting, but for a quiet conversation. "Eleanor," Jonathan began, gesturing to a sleek, bronze architectural model on his table. It was a model of the sprawling, modern training facility located adjacent to the headquarters. "This building is where we teach our new hires the value of process, the importance of protocol, and the culture of Veridian Global." He smiled, a deep, genuine expression of pride. "We are renaming it. Effective next month, the main corporate training center will be known as the Eleanor Vance Learning Center. It is not just a gesture, it is a permanent decree that true brilliance wears no specific uniform, and that we look inside the company for the answers before we look outside." Eleanor was speechless. The honor was staggering, a permanent monument to the idea that skill and instinct outweighed paper qualifications. She knew the name on that building would impact thousands of employees, long after she retired. The industry summit and the keynote. The true culmination of Eleanor's journey was the Global Strategy Industry Summit in Davos. She was the headlining keynote speaker, a dramatic choice for a prestigious event that usually featured only long-established CEOs and former world leaders. Her presence, a former custodian now leading a major corporation's cultural strategy, was the story of the summit. She stood on the enormous stage, bathed in spotlights, wearing a perfectly tailored suit that felt earned, not borrowed. The crowd was a sea of the world's most powerful business minds. Eleanor didn't start with projections or budgets. She started with her story. 6 months ago, I was wearing a navy blue jumpsuit, she began, her voice projected clearly and without apology. My job was to clean the marble floors of Veridian Global. I had a high school diploma, 8 fluent languages, and the financial strategy to save a sinking deal. But to the corporation, I was invisible. The audience was captivated. The mistake my company made, the mistake that many of your companies are making, is believing that brilliance is a commodity you buy on the outside, she stated firmly. You spend millions headhunting the perfect candidate, while overlooking the profound, highly specialized talent you already employ in your security desks, your kitchens, and your night shifts. She then pivoted to the Unseen Voices program, showcasing the tangible financial wins the men's had achieved. The Mandarin-speaking guard who now consulted on East Asia logistics. The cafeteria worker who leveraged his chemical engineering knowledge to optimize sustainable food waste. The janitorial technician who now managed complex, multilingual contract archiving. The cost of the Unseen Voices program is negligible, Eleanor explained. The value is incalculable. It showed our employees that their complex, lived, multilingual lives are not distractions from their work. They are assets that must be identified and leveraged. She concluded with a powerful, resonant message that summarized the journey. My promotion, the deals I closed, the money I saved, those were not the end goal. They were the proof of concept. The true legacy of Mr. Pierce's vision is not my title. It is the understanding that a system that values talent and loyalty over arbitrary paperwork is a system that will out-innovate, outperform, and outlast any competitor. When you lift up the unseen voices within your walls, you are not engaging in charity. You are investing in your own unstoppable competitive advantage. She finished to a standing ovation, the sound of applause echoing the profound cultural shift she had engineered. The legacy cemented. Returning to Veridian Global, Eleanor felt a quiet, satisfying sense of permanence. She was no longer just the director who spoke many languages, she was the architect of a new talent philosophy. Jonathan Pierce watched her success with satisfaction. "You know, I took a massive risk on you, Eleanor," he told her one evening in his office. Eleanor smiled, looking out at the city from the CEO's perspective. "No, Mr. Pierce. You didn't take a risk. You simply identified an opportunity that was hiding in plain sight." She knew that her promotion was never just about a new job. It was the start of a deep, systemic cultural change within Veridian Global, a change that acknowledged the dignity and value of every employee regardless of their uniform. With the Unseen Voices program flourishing, and the Eleanor Vance Learning Center poised to train a new generation of internal leaders, the promise of true meritocracy was finally taking root in the steel and glass monolith. Eleanor Vance had not just joined the C-suite, she had redefined it. Dear viewer, if you've watched up to this point, thank you for your support. I have a small request. If you enjoy my stories, you can subscribe to the channel, and don't hesitate to share your thoughts about the stories in the comments. Enjoy watching. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video.